Welcome to this special edition of Capitol Dateline. We recently covered an event sponsored by the Associated Press held each year on the top floor of the state capitol in Tallahassee. It brought together reporters and editors from all over Florida to hear directly from top-level elected officials and candidates for statewide office. The Associated Press is one of the oldest news-gathering organizations in the world, serving over 120 countries and thousands of newspapers, TV, and radio stations. The AP's conference included remarks from Governor Rick Scott on his recommended 2014 budget, where he underscored his priorities for tax cuts. Senate President Don Gates and House Speaker Will Weatherford announced their 5 priorities for action during the legislative session. Republican Attorney General Pam Bondi highlighted several issues her office is focused on for 2014. And Democratic candidates for governor and attorney general discussed their campaign priorities. But first, let's hear what the Associated Press editors hoped to accomplish. Brendan Farrington organized it and heads the AP Tallahassee Bureau.
Florida is a big state. It's an important state. It has interesting political dynamics. So, and I mean, it's always interesting. It's always an adventure. We try to figure out what's going on. Sometimes there are surprises, but it's one of the reasons we're doing an event like this today. Is session is going to be starting in March, and we like to hear from the people that are going to be driving the agenda during session and what their priorities are, what their goals are. So this meeting is not only a benefit for us at AP, but for the people that subscribe and other news organizations to just prepare themselves for the upcoming session. Because once it starts, it's going to get, pretty crazy and hectic.
Farrington explained what reporters face in covering the legislature.
Session can be very fast-paced. There are hundreds of bills that are being filed. They're moving quickly. There are changes. There are, you have to keep your eye on, amendments to these things. A bill may start out one way, and by the time it gets to the floor, it looks completely different. So the adventure is following the process, making sure that we know what the lawmakers are doing, making sure we follow the process closely, and just letting people know what their representatives here in the State House are doing for them.
Republican Governor Rick Scott, who is seeking a second term, utilized the well-attended forum to lay out the specifics of his recommendations for the 2014 budget. The governor's top priority: cut taxes, millions of dollars in taxes.
Today I'm here to announce our final proposed budget. We laid out our It's Your Money tax cut agenda to outline the 3 major priorities in our budget. Those 3 areas were: 1, cutting taxes by $500 million to help Florida families. 2, reduce state debt to decrease the financial burden on our children and our grandchildren. 3, eliminating government waste to help keep taxes low. First, our budget will return more than $500 million to Florida taxpayers, both to families and to businesses, by reducing taxes and fees. The biggest piece of our tax cut budget is a tax cut of more than $400 million by eliminating the 2009 annual motor vehicle increases. The budget will undo that tax hike and give financial relief to the millions of Floridians who are paying fees on over 13 million annual registrations. The next part of our tax cut agenda is a $100 million reduction in the sales tax on commercial rent, which costs businesses about $1.4 billion per year. Making it more affordable for businesses to lease space means they can keep more of the money they earn and help more Florida businesses hire more people. You might remember my ads back in 2010. Florida is the only state that imposes this tax, and we must keep gaining ground to make Florida the best place to start and build a business. Our budget also includes a $21.6 million cut to the business tax to exempt another 2,000 businesses. This takes our total to 81%. This means 81% of Florida businesses will no longer pay this tax and they can continue to build jobs. Additionally, the budget also lowers business filing fees by more than $33 million. But it doesn't stop there. In addition to our package of more than $500 million in ongoing tax relief for Florida businesses, this budget also includes 2 significant sales tax holidays. We have a 10-day back-to-school sales tax holiday and a 15-day hurricane preparedness sales tax holiday. These 2 tax holidays will save Florida families more than $82 million as they buy hurricane and school supplies.
Senate President Don Gates, Republican from Destin, and Speaker Will Weatherford, Republican from Wesley Chapel, announced their joint 2014 legislative work plan agenda. President Gates spoke first.
We've chosen 5 initiatives that together we plan to address during the upcoming legislative session. I'll take them off quickly and then defer to Speaker Weatherford to go into the substance. First, to expand the pathways out of poverty through education and jobs. Or to put it another way, to promote economic opportunity by continuing to transform education. If you saw President Obama's State of the Union speech last night, you know that he said that the key to economic growth and prosperity is education that is linked to the realities and opportunities of the job market. And we think that Work Plan 2014 falls squarely into that theme. Secondly, to establish Florida as the #1 military-friendly state in America by passing the Florida GI Bill, which the Speaker will explain. Third, to protect Florida's most vulnerable citizens. This needs to be a safer state for the elderly and for children, a more compassionate state for the disabled and for those who care for them, and Florida needs to be the most unwelcome place for those who would prey upon our children. Fourth, we stand with Governor Scott in intending to pass a $500 million tax cut to reduce the amount of money that government takes from Floridians. But our commitment is that unlike some past tax cuts, this will be a broad-based tax cut that will target low-income and working Floridians. And fifth, to continue to improve government accountability and efficiency by considering more options for making retirement for state workers secure and sustainable for Florida taxpayers, and pushing even further into ethics reform and open government decision-making.
Speaker Will Weatherford spoke next.
So it's traditional in a speaker and a president that when you get into year 2, sometimes you decide to throttle it back a little bit. You know, maybe you coast into your last year and, you know, it's an election year, maybe not have as bold of an agenda and dial it back. But we're not doing that. We're doubling down with our legislative agenda in 2014. What we're doing here today is creating a framework that I believe our legislators and the members of our committees in the House and the Senate can work on to refine and improve upon to put forth a great agenda for the citizens of Florida. And I'd like to start, Mr. President, with the first one that you outlined, and that is economic opportunity through education. Nearly 1 in 5 Floridians today are living in poverty. That is unacceptable. And while I don't believe in the redistribution of income, and I don't think the Senate President does either, I do believe in the redistribution of opportunity. I believe in the redistribution of knowledge. And that's why education always should be and will be at the top of our agenda. And so what we're going to do is a couple of things. The first is we're going to reduce the tuition differential from 15% to 6%, which will dramatically reduce the cost of what is now an unaffordable and out of reach Florida prepaid plan for our citizens and for the middle class. We're also going to be restoring integrity and trust in what I believe is so important in the backbone of our K-12 education system, and that is the grading system of our schools. There's going to be a lot of issues in education, from assessments to standards to teacher performance pay. All those things will have to be addressed by the legislature. But I believe the #1 issue that we have to focus on when it comes to our K-12 education system is restoring trust and integrity into our grading system.
Senate President Gates and House Speaker Weatherford went on to explain some of their other priorities. Creating a Florida GI Bill was one of those.
We believe that there are some things that we can do to make sure that we are the most military-friendly state in the United States of America, bar none. Two things that we're looking at, three things. The first is to expand education and employment opportunities through education. Provide out-of-state tuition waivers for all veterans, regardless of where they come from. Offer free tuition for deployed members of the Florida Guard, including online and book stipends, so that they can take classes while they're away overseas and not lose that opportunity to further their education.
Another priority goal of the Speaker and President is to get tough on sex offenders.
We intend to make Florida scorched earth, the most unwelcome place in America for sexually violent predators, by taking the following actions. First, increasing the maximum criminal penalties, requiring mandatory split sentences, prohibiting gain time, tolling probation until these animals are released from civil commitment. And that allows us to keep dangerous sexual predators locked up longer and keep an eye on them once they are released.
Attorney General Pam Bondi was there to discuss her 2014 priorities.
Some of my legislative priorities this session go right back into human trafficking. What we found, these, and I call them girls because they're the majority are, the 12 to 14 girls. Some of them are older. One of the cases my statewide prosecutors are making, the victims there are between 18 and 19 years old. They were recruited out of strip clubs. A lot of them are runaways. A lot of them are foster kids who have been bumped from foster home to foster home. People think that the majority of these kids are from out of the country, and they are just as much victims as the one within this country, but the majority of the victims are from within the United States. So what do? You can bring one victim in particular, and I've met so many victims of human trafficking that makes you obsessed with this issue once you meet a victim. So many victims are, one victim in particular was taken into an emergency room, and she was beaten beyond recognition. Beyond recognition. She was so scared of her captor, she lied about what happened and went right back into the house where she was chained up again. That's how serious this is. It's modern day slavery, it's real, it's happening. And so we knew we had to do more. What we're working on this session, we're going to try to do a small pilot program, but we have to have safe houses or something to that effect. Here's why. You can take these, and a lot of these kids have aged out of foster care. You can take these girls in, and we can give them the medical exams. We can talk to them. We can get them counseling. Most of them are, right when their captors get them, what do? They get them addicted to drugs. That's how they keep them. They addict them to heroin. They addict them to all kinds of drugs. So we've got to get them off the drugs. We've got to get them the medical exams. We've got to get them with the prosecutors. We've got to get them the counseling that they need.